The conference room fell silent. 32-year-old Marcus Hale stood frozen, not because he'd forgotten his answer, but because the CEO of Harrington and Reed had just stepped forward and reached for his tie. Victoria Reed's fingers brushed his collar, straightening the crooked knot with the kind of precision that made board members sweat. For a single father who'd spent 5 years convinced the world had stopped offering second chances, that quiet gesture of kindness hit harder than any rejection letter ever could. Something long buried shifted inside him, something dangerous, reckless, hopeful. And hope, Marcus had learned, was the cruelest currency of all. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I'd love to see how far this story travels. And if you want to know what happens when a man who's lost everything meets a woman who's never let herself feel anything, hit that like button and settle in. This one's going to take us somewhere unexpected. Marcus Hale learned early that the universe didn't give participation trophies. He sat in the glass-walled conference room on the 14th floor of Harrington and Reed headquarters, trying not to think about the fact that his dress shirt had a broken button hidden beneath his blazer, or that Emma's daycare bill was 3 days overdue, or that the bus fare to get here had eaten the last $8 in his wallet. His hands rested flat on the polished mahogany table, steady despite the tremor humming through his chest. Across from him sat 3 people who looked like they'd never missed a meal, never waited in a county assistant's office, never had to explain to a 5-year-old why dinner was cereal again. The first was a man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and the expression of someone perpetually disappointed by humanity. Gerald Vance, Senior VP of Operations. The nameplate in front of him gleamed like a threat. To his left was a younger woman, maybe late 20s, with sleek dark hair and a tablet she tapped with manicured nails. Amanda Cross, Head of Strategic Development. She'd smiled exactly once since Marcus walked in, a brief, clinical thing that didn't reach her eyes. And then there was Victoria Reed. She sat at the center, perfectly still, her hands folded on the table in front of her, mid-40s maybe. Tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's rent. Dark hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. But it was her eyes that got him, sharp, assessing, the kind of eyes that saw through polished resumes and rehearsed answers straight down to the ugly truth underneath. Marcus had walked into this interview knowing he didn't belong here. His resume was a jigsaw puzzle of survival. Warehouse work, night shifts at a logistics company, a 2-year gap after Sarah died that he'd tried to explain away as personal leave because completely fell apart while trying to raise a toddler alone, didn't fit neatly in the employment history section. But the job posting had been specific. Project coordinator. Experience preferred but not required. Willingness to learn essential. That last part had hooked him. Willingness to learn. As if showing up and trying hard might actually count for something. "Mr. Hale," Victoria said, her voice low and controlled, "your resume is unconventional." Here it comes, Marcus thought. The polite shutdown. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I know it doesn't look like much." "It looks," Gerald Vance cut in, "like someone who can't hold a job." Marcus's jaw tightened. He forced himself to meet the man's gaze. "It looks like someone who did what he had to do to keep his daughter fed and safe." Silence dropped like a guillotine. Amanda Cross glanced up from her tablet, one eyebrow slightly raised. Victoria Reed didn't move, didn't blink, just watched him with those 2 sharp eyes. "My wife died 5 years ago," Marcus continued, his voice steady, even as his pulse hammered. "Cancer, stage 4. We didn't catch it until it was too late. I had a decent job before that, assistant manager at a distribution center, but when she got sick, I couldn't keep the hours, so I left. And after she was gone..." He stopped, swallowed. "After she was gone," he said quietly, "I had a 3-year-old who didn't understand why her mom wasn't coming home. I took whatever work I could find that let me be there when she needed me. Night shifts, weekend gigs. It wasn't pretty, but we made it." The room stayed silent. Victoria tilted her head slightly, the barest shift in posture. "And now?" "Now she's 5, Marcus said. "She starts kindergarten in 2 months. I need something stable, something with a future. I'm not asking for charity. I'll work harder than anyone you've got. I just need a chance to prove it." Gerald Vance made a sound that might have been a scoff. Amanda Cross tapped something on her tablet. Victoria Reed stood. Marcus's stomach dropped. This was it. The thanks but no thanks. The "will be in touch" that meant Don't hold your breath. But instead of dismissing him, Victoria walked around the table, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She stopped directly in front of him. Stand up, she said. Marcus blinked. Ma'am? Stand up, Mr. Hale. He stood, confused, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't name. Victoria reached forward, and Marcus went completely still. Her fingers brushed the edge of his collar, the crooked knot of his tie, the one he'd struggled with in the bathroom mirror that morning, the one that refused to sit straight no matter how many times he adjusted it. She straightened it with 3 efficient movements, her touch light and impersonal, her expression unchanged. There, she said quietly, stepping back. Better. Marcus couldn't breathe. It was nothing, a gesture, the kind of thing a mother might do, or a wife, or... But Sarah was gone, and his own mother had stopped calling 2 years ago, tired of watching him struggle. And no one had done something that small, that kind, that human in longer than he could remember. Thank you, he managed, his voice rougher than he intended. Victoria returned to her seat, her expression unreadable. We'll be in touch, Mr. Hale. He nodded, grabbed his folder, and walked out of that room on legs that felt like someone else's. The bus ride home took 40 minutes. Marcus sat near the back, staring out the window at the city blurring past, glass towers giving way to older buildings, chain stores, pawn shops, the daycare center where Emma spent her days finger painting and learning songs he couldn't afford a piano for her to practice. He pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from the daycare. His chest tightened. He called back. Little Sprouts Daycare, this is Jenny. Hey, it's Marcus Hale. I saw you called. Oh, Mr. Hale, yes, Emma's fine, don't worry. But we do need to talk about the payment. I know. I'm sorry. I'll have it by Friday. A pause. Jenny's voice softened. We really can't extend it past that, Marcus. I'm sorry. It's policy. I understand, Marcus said, even though understanding didn't make it easier. Friday. I promise. He hung up and pressed his forehead against the cool glass. Friday was 4 days away. He had $73 in his checking account and a maxed-out credit card he was afraid to even look at anymore. If he didn't get this job, he cut the thought off. No point spiraling. Not yet. But Emma was waiting for him at pickup, her backpack almost as big as she was, her curls escaping from the ponytail he'd wrestled them into that morning. Daddy! She crashed into his legs, and Marcus scooped her up, burying his face in her hair. She smelled like crayons and apple juice and the lavender detergent he bought in bulk because it was the cheapest. Hey, Bug. Good day? I made you a picture, she announced, wriggling down and unzipping her backpack with the kind of intensity only a 5-year-old could muster. She pulled out a crumpled piece of construction paper covered in marker scribbles. It was supposed to be the 2 of them, he thought. 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. It's perfect, Marcus said, and meant it. Jenny appeared in the doorway, her expression apologetic. Marcus gave her a tight nod. I know, I'll handle it, and took Emma's hand. Where'd you go today, Daddy? Emma asked as they walked toward the bus stop. I had a meeting. Like a grown-up meeting? Yeah, Bug. Like a grown-up meeting. Did you wear your tie? Marcus smiled despite himself. I did. Was it crooked? His smile faltered. He thought of Victoria Reed's fingers on his collar, the unexpected gentleness of it, the way it had cracked something open inside him. Yeah, he said quietly. It was. Their apartment was a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. Marcus slept on the pull-out couch in the living room so Emma could have the bedroom. The walls were thin enough that he could hear Mrs. Alvarez's TV through the plaster, and the heating barely worked in winter, but the rent was manageable and the landlord didn't ask too many questions. Emma did her homework at the kitchen table, tracing letters, coloring shapes, while Marcus made dinner. Spaghetti. Again. He'd gotten good at making the same 5 meals stretch across the week in different configurations. Daddy? Yeah, Bug? Is Mommy in heaven? Marcus's hand stilled on the pot. They'd had this conversation before, 100 times maybe, but it still hit like a sucker punch every time. He crouched down next to her chair. Yeah, baby, she is. Does she see me? Every day. Does she know I got a gold star in reading? Marcus's throat tightened. She knows. And she's so proud of you." Emma nodded, satisfied, and went back to her letters. Marcus stood, turned back to the stove, and blinked hard against the burn in his eyes. 3 days passed. Marcus picked up a shift at the warehouse, unloading trucks until his back screamed and his hands were raw. It wasn't enough to cover the daycare bill, but it was something. He sold an old guitar he hadn't touched in years to a pawn shop for $60. That helped. He didn't let himself think about the interview. Hope was expensive, and he couldn't afford it. But on Thursday afternoon, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, probably a debt collector, or the electric company. Or, he answered. "Mr. Hale?" Professional voice. Female, vaguely familiar. "This is Amanda Cross from Harrington and Reed. Ms. Reed would like to offer you the position of project coordinator, pending a background check, of course. Are you still interested?" Marcus sat down hard on the couch. "Mr. Hale?" "Yes," he said, his voice barely working. "Yes, I'm interested." "Excellent. Can you start Monday?" Monday, 4 days away. "Yes," Marcus said again. "Absolutely." "Great. I'll send over the paperwork. Congratulations." She hung up. Marcus sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, staring at nothing. Then he laughed, a short, disbelieving sound that cracked in the middle. Then he cried. Not the broken, hopeless crying of the past 5 years. Something different, something that felt almost like relief. Monday morning arrived too fast and not fast enough. Marcus dropped Emma at daycare, payment cleared, thank God, and caught the bus downtown. He wore the same suit, the same tie, but this time he'd watched a YouTube tutorial on how to tie it properly. It still sat a little crooked. The office was chaos in the best way. Phones ringing, people moving with purpose. The hum of a machine that actually worked. Amanda Cross met him in the lobby and walked him through security, past cubicles and glass-walled offices, into a space that was somehow both overwhelming and exhilarating. "You'll report directly to Ms. Reed," Amanda explained, her pace brisk. "She's particular. Don't take it personally." Noted. They stopped outside a corner office. Through the glass, Marcus could see Victoria at her desk, head down, focus absolute. Amanda knocked once and opened the door without waiting for a response. "Ms. Reed, Marcus Hale is here." Victoria looked up. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or assessment. "Thank you, Amanda." Amanda left. Marcus stood there, suddenly aware of how out of place he was. This office alone probably cost more than he made in 6 months. "Sit," Victoria said, gesturing to the chair across from her. He sat. She studied him for a long moment, the same unsettling intensity from the interview. "You're going to struggle here," she said finally. Marcus blinked. "Excuse me? This job, this environment. You're going to struggle. You don't have the background, the training, the network. You're starting from behind." His jaw tightened. "Then why hire me?" "Because," Victoria said, leaning back slightly, "struggle doesn't mean failure. And I don't need people who coast. I need people who fight." She slid a folder across the desk toward him. "This is your first project, client presentation, 2 weeks. You'll coordinate with the design team, liaise with the client, and manage the timeline. Questions?" Marcus opened the folder. His eyes scanned the brief. Corporate restructuring, brand refresh, budget in the low 6 figures. He looked up. "Plenty, but I'll figure it out." The corner of Victoria's mouth lifted. Barely, but it was there. "Good. Get to work, Mr. Hale." The next 2 weeks were a baptism by fire. Marcus learned the software, the protocols, the unspoken rules of corporate survival. He stayed late, skipping lunches, taking notes on everything. He asked questions, too many probably, but no one told him to stop. The design team was wary at first. He was new, unproven, an outsider in a tailored suit that didn't quite fit. But Marcus had spent years reading people, reading rooms, figuring out how to survive in spaces that didn't want him. He listened more than he spoke. He gave credit where it was due. He didn't pretend to know things he didn't. Slowly, they warmed to him. The client presentation loomed. Marcus rehearsed his parts until he could recite them in his sleep. He coordinated schedules, tracked deliverables, flagged risks before they became problems. And Victoria watched. She didn't hover, didn't micromanage. But Marcus could feel her attention, sharp, constant, assessing, like she was waiting for him to stumble. He didn't. The presentation went smoothly. The client signed off. The project moved forward. Afterward, Victoria called him into her office. "You did well," she said. Marcus exhaled. "Thank you. Don't let it go to your head. This was the easy part." He almost smiled. "Noted." She looked at him for a moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she nodded toward the door. "Go home, Mr. Hale. Your daughter is probably waiting." Marcus paused. "How did you—" "You mentioned her in the interview." "Right." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Marcus?" He looked back. It was the first time she'd used his first name. "You're doing fine," she said quietly. "Keep going." Something warm and unfamiliar settled in his chest. "Yes, ma'am." Says, 3 months in, Marcus started to believe he might actually survive this. The work was brutal, the hours long, the stakes high. But he was learning, growing. The paychecks were steady, enough to cover rent, daycare, groceries without having to choose between them, enough to breathe. Emma noticed. "You're happier, Daddy," she said one night, curled up next to him on the couch. "Yeah, Bug. I think I am." "Because of your job?" "Because things are getting better." She smiled and went back to her book. A library copy with a cracked spine and someone else's name written inside the cover. Marcus watched her, this small, fierce person who'd kept him standing when everything else fell apart, and felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Hope. Real, reckless, terrifying hope. But the universe, Marcus had learned, didn't give participation trophies. It was a Thursday when everything shifted. He was in the middle of a budget review when his phone buzzed. Daycare. Again. He stepped out into the hallway, dread pooling in his gut. "Mr. Hale, it's Jenny. Emma's running a fever. 102. We need you to pick her up." Marcus closed his eyes. "I'm on my way." He grabbed his coat, told Amanda he had an emergency, and bolted. The bus took forever. Every red light felt personal. By the time he got to the daycare, Emma was curled up on a cot in the nurse's office, pale and glassy-eyed. "Hey, Bug," Marcus whispered, scooping her up. She buried her face in his neck, hot and small and trembling. He took her home, gave her children's Tylenol, set her up on the couch with blankets and cartoons, checked her temperature every hour. It climbed to 103. He called the nurse hotline. They said watch her overnight, bring her to the clinic in the morning if it doesn't break. Marcus didn't sleep. He sat next to the couch, one hand on Emma's forehead, watching her breathe. By morning, the fever was 104. He drove her to the urgent care clinic, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The doctor examined her, ran tests, looked grave. "Pneumonia," she said. "We need to admit her." Marcus's world tilted. "She's going to be okay," the doctor added quickly, "but she needs IV antibiotics, monitoring, probably 3 days. 3 days. Marcus had a major project deadline in 2. A client launch that Victoria was personally overseeing, the kind of thing that could make or break his still fragile standing in the company. He looked at Emma, small and scared in the hospital bed. And the choice wasn't even a choice. "Okay," he said. "Whatever she needs." He called Amanda from the hospital parking lot. "I can't come in," he said, his voice raw. "My daughter, she's sick. I'm sorry. I know the launch is—" "Marcus," Amanda's voice was careful. "How serious is it?" "Pneumonia. They're admitting her." A pause. "I'll let Miss Reed know." The line went dead. Marcus sat in his car and felt the fragile hope of the past 3 months crack wide open. He'd blown it. He knew he had. No matter how hard he'd worked, how much he'd proven, one emergency and it was over. The universe didn't give participation trophies. It just kept taking. The pediatric wing smelled like antiseptic and fear. Marcus sat in the vinyl chair next to Emma's bed, watching the IV drip steady into her small arm. She'd finally fallen asleep an hour ago, her breathing still too shallow, her cheeks still too flushed. The nurse had assured him the antibiotics were working, that kids bounced back fast, that he should try to rest. Rest, as if that were possible. His phone sat face down on his lap, silent. He'd turned off the ringer after the third call from the office. Couldn't deal with it. Not yet. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Victoria's face, that unreadable expression, the one that could mean anything or nothing. The same look she'd given him when she straightened his tie that first day. He wondered if she regretted hiring him now. Probably. Emma stirred, made a small sound. Marcus leaned forward, brushed the damp curls off her forehead. "I'm here, Bug," he whispered. "I'm right here," she settled again. His phone buzzed. He flipped it over, expecting another message from Amanda with thinly veiled urgency about deliverables and timelines. Instead, it was a text from a number he didn't recognize. "How is she?" Marcus stared at it. No name, no context, just those 3 words. He typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Victoria Reed." Marcus's breath caught. He read it again to make sure he hadn't imagined it. His boss, the CEO of Harrington and Reed, the woman who ran a multi-million-dollar company with the precision of a surgeon, was texting him at 11 o'clock at night to ask about his daughter. He didn't know what to do with that. "She's stable," he typed. "Pneumonia. They're keeping her for observation." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Good. Stay with her. We'll handle the launch." Marcus read it twice, then a third time. "I'm sorry," he typed. "I know the timing. Stop." 1 word. Immediate. Final. Then another message. "Your daughter needs you. That's not negotiable. We'll talk when you're back." Marcus set the phone down, his hands unsteady. He didn't know what to make of Victoria Reed. Didn't know if this was kindness or just pragmatism. Didn't know if he was still employed or just being let down easy. But for the first time in 72 hours, the knot in his chest loosened slightly. Emma coughed in her sleep, and Marcus reached for her hand. He'd deal with work later. Right now, this was all that mattered. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of hospital shifts, bad cafeteria coffee, and fitful sleep in chairs that weren't designed for sleeping. The nurses knew Marcus by name now, brought him extra blankets, didn't hassle him about visiting hours. Emma improved slowly. The fever broke on day 2. By day 3, she was sitting up, asking for her crayons, complaining about the IV in her arm. "When can we go home, Daddy?" "Soon, Bug. The doctor wants to make sure you're really better first." "I am better. I know. But we have to let the smart people make sure, okay?" She sighed dramatically, slumping back against the pillows. "This is boring." Marcus smiled despite the exhaustion. "Yeah, hospitals are pretty boring. Can I watch cartoons?" "You've been watching cartoons for 3 days straight." "So?" He laughed, an actual laugh, rough and surprised. "Okay, fine, cartoons it is." While Emma watched animated animals solve problems through teamwork and friendship, Marcus finally checked his work email. 47 unread messages. He scrolled through them, bracing for disaster. But most were routine updates, project threads he'd been CC'd on, nothing urgent. Amanda had sent a brief note. "Launch went smoothly. Clients happy. Focus on your daughter." No reprimands, no passive-aggressive reminders about responsibility. The last email in his inbox was from Victoria, sent late the previous night. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained a single sentence. "She's lucky to have you." Marcus stared at it until the words blurred. Mum. They released Emma on Thursday afternoon with a prescription for oral antibiotics and instructions to follow up with her pediatrician in a week. Marcus signed the discharge papers, gathered her stuffed animals and coloring books, and carried her out to the car he'd borrowed from his downstairs neighbor. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" "Bug, you just got out of the hospital." "But I was sick. Sick people get ice cream." Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was grinning, color back in her cheeks, eyes bright with the kind of relentless optimism only kids could pull off. "Fine," he said, "but just a small one." "Yes!" They stopped at a chain place near the apartment. Emma got chocolate with sprinkles. Marcus got nothing, just watched her eat, relief and exhaustion warring in his chest. "You didn't eat yours," Emma said, chocolate smeared on her chin. "I'm not hungry." "You're always not hungry." Marcus didn't have an answer for that. They got home just as the sun was setting, the apartment dim and cool. Marcus got Emma settled on the couch with her blankets, set up a movie, made her drink a full glass of water. "I missed home," she said, curling into the cushions. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "Me too." His phone buzzed. Work email. Amanda again. "Ms. Reed would like to see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Her office. Marcus's stomach dropped. Here it came, the conversation he'd been dreading. The "you're a good guy, but this isn't tea working out" speech. The "thanks for trying." He typed back, "I'll be there." Then he sat on the edge of the couch, Emma's feet in his lap, and tried not to think about how fast 3 months of stability could vanish. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Marcus dropped Emma at his neighbor Mrs. Alvarez's apartment. She'd agreed to watch her for a few hours, waved off his attempts to pay her. "Just bring her back with stories," she'd said, patting his arm. "And stop looking so worried. You'll get wrinkles." The bus ride downtown felt longer than usual. Marcus watched the city wake up through the window. Coffee shops opening, people in suits hurrying toward their futures, everything moving forward while he sat suspended in amber, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He arrived at Harrington and Reed at 8:50, took the elevator to the 14th floor, walked past the cubicles and glass offices that had started to feel almost familiar. Amanda was waiting outside Victoria's office. "She's expecting you," Amanda said, her expression neutral. "Thanks." "Marcus." Amanda's voice stopped him. He turned. She looked at him for a moment, something almost sympathetic in her eyes. "For what it's worth, you didn't screw this up." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Victoria's office door was open. She sat at her desk, focused on her computer screen, the same controlled intensity he'd come to recognize. She glanced up as he approached. "Close the door." Marcus did. His heart was hammering so hard he wondered if she could hear it. "Sit." He sat. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying him with that unnerving focus. The silence stretched. Marcus forced himself not to fidget. "How is Emma?" Victoria asked finally. "Better. She's home. Still on antibiotics, but the doctor says she'll be fine." "Good." Another silence. "You're afraid I'm going to fire you," Victoria said. Not a question, a statement. Marcus met her gaze. "Are you?" "No." The word landed like a physical thing. Marcus exhaled, didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. "You missed a major deadline," Victoria continued, her tone even. "You left the team in a difficult position. The launch could have gone badly." "I know." "But it didn't. Amanda and the team pulled it together. The client is satisfied. And you—" She paused, something shifting in her expression. "You made the right call." Marcus blinked. "I did?" "Your daughter was in the hospital with pneumonia. There was no other call to make." Victoria folded her hands on the desk. "I don't punish people for being human, Mr. Hale. I punish them for being careless." "You weren't careless. You were a parent." Something cracked open in Marcus's chest, relief so sharp it almost hurt. "I built this company," Victoria said quietly, "by working 80-hour weeks, sleeping 4 hours a night, sacrificing everything that wasn't directly tied to success. I don't have children. I don't have a partner. I have quarterly earnings and board meetings and merger negotiations." She looked at him, and for the first time Marcus saw something raw beneath the control. "I chose that, deliberately. But I'm not naive enough to think everyone should make the same choice, or that it's even possible for everyone." Marcus didn't know what to say. Didn't know if he was supposed to say anything. "You're a good employee," Victoria continued. "You work hard. You ask smart questions. You don't make excuses. But more than that, you're a good father. And I won't ask you to choose between those things." The words settled over him like a weight and a release all at once. "Thank you," Marcus managed, his voice rough. Victoria nodded once, brisk, back to business. "The Barrett account is launching next month. I want you on it. Bigger scope, higher stakes. You'll work directly with me on this one." Marcus's pulse spiked. "Directly with you? Problem?" No, I just—" He stopped, started again. "I won't let you down." "I know." Victoria turned back to her computer, a clear dismissal. Then, as Marcus stood to leave, she added, "And Marcus, He paused at the door. Next time she's sick, don't wait 3 days to tell someone. We're not monsters here. The corner of her mouth lifted. Barely. But it was there. Marcus smiled despite himself. Yes, ma'am. The Barrett account consumed the next 6 weeks. It was a corporate giant. International reach, old money, traditional values. They wanted a complete brand overhaul, digital integration, market repositioning. The kind of project that could put Harrington and Reed on the map in a whole new way. And Victoria wanted Marcus in the center of it. He coordinated with design, legal, finance, managed timelines, flagged conflicts, kept everything moving. But the real education came from working directly with Victoria. She was exacting, ruthless even, sent back presentations with single-word feedback. Again, asked questions that exposed every weak point in a strategy. Demanded excellence not because she enjoyed watching people squirm, but because mediocrity bored her. Marcus learned fast. Had to. There was no room for half measures in Victoria's orbit. But he also saw something else. The way she stayed late when everyone else went home. The way she remembered details about people's lives. Amanda's sister's wedding, Gerald's knee surgery, the intern's college finals. The way she operated with a kind of lonely precision that Marcus recognized because he'd lived it himself for 5 years. She was good at her job. Brilliant, even. But she was alone in a way that felt deliberate and sad all at once. One night, 3 weeks into the Barrett project, Marcus was still at the office at 9 p.m., reviewing contract language for the 18th time. His eyes burned, his back ached. Emma was at Mrs. Alvarez's, probably asleep by now. Victoria's office light was still on. Marcus stood, stretched, walked over, knocked on the door frame. She looked up, unsurprised. Problem? No, just, he gestured vaguely, wanted to make sure you were still alive. Her eyebrow lifted. I'm hard to kill. Yeah, I'm getting that impression. A pause. Then Victoria gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. Marcus sat. She set down her pen, leaned back. You don't have to stay this late. Neither do you. I don't have a 5-year-old waiting at home. Mrs. Alvarez has her, and honestly, I think Emma likes her better than me right now. She makes better cookies. Victoria's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Dangerous competition. Tell me about it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside, the city glittered in the dark, a million lights that never stopped burning. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. You're going to anyway. Fair point. Why'd you hire me? Really? Victoria considered him. You want the professional answer or the honest one? Honest. Because you reminded me that competence isn't the same as credentials. She tapped her pen against the desk. I've hired plenty of people with perfect resumes who couldn't handle real pressure. You walked in with a mess of a work history and more guts than sense. And when I asked you hard questions, you didn't deflect. You didn't make excuses. You just told the truth. Marcus absorbed that. And the crooked tie? Victoria's expression shifted, something softer, almost vulnerable. You looked like someone who'd been fighting alone for a long time. I know what that looks like. The honesty of it hit harder than Marcus expected. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess you would. Another silence, this one heavier. You should go home, Victoria said finally. Emma might like Mrs. Alvarez's cookies, but she still needs her father. Marcus stood, hesitated. You should go home too. I will. Eventually. He knew she wouldn't, but he also knew better than to push. Good night, Ms. Reed. Victoria. He paused. What? When it's just us, you can call me Victoria. Something warm and complicated settled in Marcus's chest. Good night, Victoria. Good night, Marcus. He left her there, alone in her glass office. The city spread out below her like a kingdom she'd built, and couldn't quite figure out how to leave. The Barrett presentation was scheduled for mid-November, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Marcus had run the numbers, rehearsed the pitch, coordinated every piece until it moved like clockwork. Victoria reviewed everything personally, made surgical edits, approved the final version. You're ready, she said the night before the presentation. You sure? I'm never sure, but you've done the work. That's all you can control. The presentation took place in the largest conference room Harrington and Reed had. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a table that could seat 20, screens built into the walls. The Barrett executives arrived in tailored suits and skeptical expressions, the kind of people who'd seen 1,000 pitches and been impressed by none of them. Victoria led, Marcus supported. Amanda handled the technical elements. Gerald managed the financial breakdown. It was seamless, professional, exactly what they'd rehearsed. But halfway through, one of the Barrett executives, a silver-haired man named Richard Thornton, interrupted. "This is all very polished," he said, his tone dismissive, "but I'm not hearing anything we couldn't get from a dozen other firms." The room went tense. Victoria didn't miss a beat. "Then you're not listening." Thornton's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" "We're not offering you polish," Victoria said, her voice cool and sharp. "We're offering you precision. You came to us because your brand is bleeding market share to younger competitors. You're losing relevance. Our strategy doesn't just refresh your image, it rebuilds your infrastructure from the ground up. Digital integration, demographic targeting, supply chain optimization. That's not polish, that's surgery." Thornton leaned back, studying her. "And you think you're the only firm capable of that?" "No," Victoria said, "but we're the only firm that will tell you the truth when you're wrong. And you've been wrong for the past 3 years." The silence that followed could have cut glass. Then Thornton laughed, a sharp surprise sound. "I like you." Victoria's expression didn't change. "I don't need you to like me. I need you to trust me." Thornton glanced at his colleagues, then back at Victoria. "Continue." They did. And by the end of the presentation, Thornton was nodding, his skepticism replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "We'll need to discuss this internally," he said as they wrapped up. "But I'll be honest, this is the first pitch in months that didn't feel like smoke and mirrors." "We don't do smoke and mirrors," Victoria said. Thornton smiled. "Clearly." After the Barrett team left, the Harrington and Reed group reconvened in Victoria's office. Amanda was grinning. Gerald looked grudgingly impressed. "That was a gutsy move," Gerald said, "calling him out like that." "It was the truth," Victoria replied. "He knew it. We knew it. No point pretending otherwise." Amanda glanced at Marcus. "You held your own in there. Nice work." Marcus nodded, still processing. He'd been terrified the whole time, certain one wrong word would tank everything, but it had worked. They'd done it. Victoria caught his eye. "Good job, Marcus." Coming from her, those 3 words felt like a medal. The Barrett account closed a week later. Full contract. Multi-year engagement. The biggest deal Harrington and Reed had landed in 18 months. There was a celebration, champagne in the conference room, congratulations all around. Marcus stood on the edge of it, watching people who'd barely acknowledged him 3 months ago now clapping him on the shoulder, telling him he'd earned it. Victoria stood apart too, near the windows, a glass of champagne she hadn't touched in her hand. Marcus walked over. "Not a fan of parties?" he asked. "Not a fan of small talk." "Fair." They stood in silence, watching the office celebrate a victory they'd built together. "This changes things," Victoria said quietly. "For the company, for your career." Marcus glanced at her. "How so?" "There'll be more opportunities, bigger projects, if you want them." "And if I don't?" Victoria looked at him, something unreadable in her eyes. "Then you stay exactly where you are. No one's going to push you into something you don't want." Marcus thought about that. Thought about Emma. About the fragile stability they'd built. About how easy it would be to lose it all if he reached too far. But he also thought about the past 3 months, the way he'd stopped feeling like he was drowning, the way work had become something more than just survival. "I want them," he said. "The opportunities. I'm ready." Victoria nodded, something like approval in her expression. "Good." Amanda appeared at Victoria's elbow, slightly tipsy, grinning. "Come on, you two. You can brood later. Right now, we're celebrating." Victoria sighed. "I don't brood." "You absolutely brood," Amanda said. "Marcus, back me up." Marcus held up his hands. "I'm not getting in the middle of this." Victoria's mouth twitched. "Smart man." Amanda dragged them both into the crowd, and for the first time in longer than Marcus could remember, he let himself feel something other than fear. He felt proud. November bled into December. The office took on a festive chaos. Decorations appearing in cubicles, holiday party planning, year-end deadlines colliding with people's PTO requests. Marcus navigated it all, his confidence growing with each project he completed, each problem he solved. Emma was thriving too. Kindergarten was going well. She'd made friends, learned to read basic words, brought home art projects that Marcus hung on the fridge with the kind of pride that made his chest ache. "Daddy, can we get a Christmas tree this year?" she asked one night, curled up next to him on the couch. Marcus hesitated. Money was better, but it still wasn't great. A tree, decorations, presents, it added up fast. "We'll see, Bug." "That means no. That means maybe." She sighed, dramatic. "You always say maybe. And sometimes maybe turns into yes." She perked up at that. "Really?" Marcus smiled. "Really." The next day, Victoria called him into her office. "Close the door," she said, and Marcus's stomach did that familiar drop. Even now, even after everything, that phrase still triggered panic. He sat. Victoria slid an envelope across the desk. "What's this?" Marcus asked. "Open it." He did. Inside was a check. A bonus. $5,000. Marcus stared at it. "I don't—" "The Barrett deal brought in significant revenue," Victoria said. "You were instrumental in closing it. This is your share." "Victoria, I can't—" "You can. And you will." Her tone left no room for argument. "You earned it." Marcus looked at the check again, the number almost absurd. $5,000. Enough to cover Emma's medical bills, enough for Christmas, enough to breathe. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. Victoria nodded. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "There's a company holiday party next week. You should bring Emma." Marcus blinked. "To a work party?" "It's family-friendly. There'll be other kids. And honestly, I'd like to meet her." Something about the way she said it, casual, almost shy, caught Marcus off guard. "Yeah," he said. "Okay, we'll be there." Victoria's expression softened, just slightly. "Good." Marcus left her office with the check still in his hand, his mind spinning, his heart doing something complicated and dangerous. He was starting to realize that Victoria Reed wasn't just his boss. She was becoming something else entirely, and he had no idea what to do about that. The company holiday party was held at a downtown hotel with chandeliers that cost more than Marcus's annual salary and a buffet table that seemed to stretch for miles. Emma gripped his hand as they walked through the lobby, her eyes wide, taking in the marble floors and the enormous Christmas tree decorated with silver and gold ornaments that caught the light like trapped stars. "This is fancy," she whispered. "Yeah, Bug, it's pretty fancy." "Are you important now?" Marcus almost laughed. "I work here. That's all." "But you got a bonus. Mrs. Alvarez said that means you're important." "Mrs. Alvarez talks too much." Emma giggled, and Marcus felt some of the tension ease out of his shoulders. He'd agonized over coming tonight, worried Emma would feel out of place, worried he'd feel out of place. But she looked happy in the red dress they'd found at a thrift store. Her hair in 2 neat braids he'd practiced 3 times before getting right. The ballroom was packed. Colleagues Marcus recognized, their families, people from other departments he'd never met. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and sparkling cider. A DJ played music that was upbeat without being obnoxious. Near the back, there was a kids' area with games and crafts and a table full of cookies. Emma spotted it immediately. "Can I go?" "Yeah, stay where I can see you, okay?" She bolted before he finished the sentence. Marcus exhaled, watching her join a group of kids already elbow-deep in construction paper and glitter. Then he turned and nearly collided with Amanda. "Easy there," she said, laughing. She wore a dark green dress and heels that made her taller than him. "You made it." "Barely. Emma's been asking about this for days." "Which one's Emma?" Marcus pointed. Emma was arguing with another kid about the correct way to fold a paper snowflake, her face serious, completely absorbed. Amanda smiled. "She looks like you." "Poor kid." "I meant it as a compliment." Amanda clinked her glass against his. "Relax, Marcus. You're allowed to have fun." "I'll try." Amanda drifted off into the crowd, and Marcus found himself standing awkwardly near the buffet, nursing a glass of sparkling cider he didn't really want. He spotted Gerald across the room, deep in conversation with someone from accounting. Saw a few people from the design team laughing near the bar. No sign of Victoria. He told himself it didn't matter, told himself he wasn't looking for her. Then she walked in. Victoria wore black, simple, elegant, the kind of dress that probably cost a fortune but didn't scream it. Her hair was down for the first time Marcus had ever seen, falling just past her shoulders. She moved through the room like someone used to being watched, her posture perfect, her expression controlled. But Marcus saw the tension in her shoulders, saw the way her eyes scanned the crowd with the same assessing focus she brought to board meetings. She was working, even here, even now she was working. Their eyes met across the room. Victoria's expression shifted, something softer, almost relieved. She walked toward him, weaving through clusters of conversation, and Marcus felt his pulse kick up for reasons he didn't want to examine too closely. "You came," she said when she reached him. "You invited me." People ignore invitations all the time. Not from their boss. Victoria's mouth twitched. "Fair point." She glanced around. "Where's Emma?" Marcus nodded toward the kids' area. Engaged in what appears to be a heated debate about snowflake architecture. Victoria followed his gaze. Emma was holding up her creation, gesturing emphatically while another kid shook his head. "She's passionate." That's one word for it. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the party swirl around them. Someone laughed too loud near the bar. The DJ switched to a song Marcus vaguely recognized from the radio. "You look uncomfortable," Victoria said. "I am uncomfortable." "Want to leave?" "Can't. Emma would kill me." Victoria smiled, a real one, small and genuine. "Then we suffer together." Before Marcus could respond, Emma appeared at his side, breathless and covered in glitter. "Daddy, I made you a snowflake, and I made one for—" She stopped, staring up at Victoria. "Who are you?" "Emma," Marcus said quickly. "This is Ms. Reed. She's my boss." Emma's eyes went wide. "You're the boss?" "I am," Victoria said, crouching down to Emma's eye level. Marcus watched, startled by the ease of the gesture. "And you must be Emma. How do you know my name?" "Your dad talks about you." Emma glanced at Marcus, suspicious. "He does?" "All the time." "What does he say?" Victoria considered this seriously. "That you're smart, that you ask good questions, that you make excellent snowflakes." Emma beamed. She thrust the paper snowflake at Victoria. "This one's for you." Victoria took it carefully, like she was handling something precious. "Thank you. I'll put it in my office." "Really? Really?" Emma studied Victoria for a long moment, her 5-year-old brain clearly processing something important. Then she said, "You're pretty." Marcus choked on his cider. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Amusement, maybe, or surprise. "Thank you. So are you." "I know," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Daddy says I look like my mom." The words hit like a punch. Marcus saw Victoria's posture shift slightly, recognition settling in her features. "Then she must have been beautiful," Victoria said quietly. Emma nodded, solemn now. "She was, but she's gone. I'm sorry." "It's okay. Daddy takes care of me now." Emma grabbed Marcus's hand. "He's really good at it, except for tying ties. He's bad at that." Victoria's eyes met Marcus's over Emma's head, something warm and complicated passing between them. "He's getting better," Victoria said. Emma shrugged, already losing interest. "Can I have cookies now?" "Yeah, Bug. Go ahead." She ran off, and Marcus was left standing with Victoria, the weight of the moment settling around them. "She's wonderful," Victoria said. "She's a menace. She's honest." "That's rare." Marcus laughed, rough and surprised. "Yeah, she definitely doesn't have a filter." "Good. The world needs more of that." They drifted toward the edge of the room, away from the noise, and found themselves near the windows overlooking the city. The view was spectacular, light stretching in every direction, the river cutting through it all like a dark ribbon. "I meant what I said," Victoria said after a moment, "about putting the snowflake in my office." "You don't have to do that." "I know." Another silence, comfortable almost. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. Victoria glanced at him. "You ask a lot of questions." Occupational hazard. Go ahead. Do you ever get tired of this? He gestured vaguely at the party, the people, the performance of it all. The schmoozing, the small talk, the pretending. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. Every day. Then why do it? Because it's part of the job, and the job is what I'm good at. That's not an answer. She looked at him, really looked at him, and Marcus saw something crack in her composure. It's the only answer I have. The honesty of it gutted him. He wanted to say something, wanted to tell her she deserved more than just being good at something, but before he could find the words, Gerald appeared with a colleague in tow, launching into some story about a client meeting, and the moment dissolved. Victoria slipped back into CEO mode, her expression smoothing, her posture straightening. Marcus watched her handle Gerald with practiced ease and wondered how long she'd been performing this particular role. He wondered if she even remembered who she was underneath it. Emma found him again an hour later, yawning, dragging a stuffed reindeer someone had given her from the kids' table. Ready to go, Bug? Can we come back next year? Marcus smiled. Maybe. You always say maybe. And sometimes maybe turns into yes. They said their goodbyes. Emma waved enthusiastically at Victoria, who waved back with the kind of restrained warmth that made Marcus's chest ache. Then they headed out into the cold December night, Emma half asleep on his shoulder, the city glittering around them like something out of a dream. Marcus thought about Victoria standing alone by those windows, looking out at a world she'd conquered but couldn't quite seem to touch. And he thought about how dangerous it was, starting to care about someone who'd built walls so high, even they couldn't see over them anymore. But caring, Marcus was learning, wasn't something you could logic your way out of. It just happened. Quiet and relentless and terrifying. And there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. What? Christmas came and went in a blur of wrapping paper and Emma's delighted shrieks. And the small artificial tree Marcus had splurged on because sometimes maybe really did turn into yes. He took a few days off, his first real vacation in years, and spent them doing nothing important. Building block towers with Emma, watching movies, sleeping past 6 a.m. It felt almost normal, almost like a life instead of just survival. When he returned to work after New Year's, the office had that strange, quiet energy of people easing back into routine. Marcus settled into his desk, checked his email, started organizing his calendar for the coming weeks. There was a message from Victoria sent late on December 30th. Need to see you. My office. 10 a.m. Marcus's stomach tightened. The phrasing was different from her usual directives, less formal, more urgent. At 10, he knocked on her door. Come in. Victoria sat at her desk, but something was off. Her posture was too rigid, her expression too carefully blank. On the desk in front of her was a folder. Close the door, she said. Marcus did. Sat. Waited. Victoria slid the folder across the desk. The board approved a promotion, senior project manager. It's yours if you want it. Marcus opened the folder. The job description, the salary, nearly double what he was making now, the responsibilities. It was everything he'd been working toward. This is... He stopped, looked up. Why do you look like someone died? Victoria's jaw tightened. Because the position reports directly to me, which means we'll be working together even more closely than we already are, and people are going to notice. Notice what? That I'm giving preferential treatment to someone She stopped herself, looked away. To someone on my team. The unfinished sentence hung in the air like smoke. Marcus's heart was pounding. Are you? Giving me preferential treatment? No, you earned this, but perception matters, and the perception will be that I'm playing favorites. So don't promote me. Victoria's gaze snapped back to him. What? If it's going to cause problems, don't do it. I'm fine where I am. You're not fine where you are. You're underutilized and underpaid. And if I don't promote you, someone else will poach you within 6 months. Then what's the problem? Victoria stood, walked to the windows, her back to him. The problem is that they won't be entirely wrong. Marcus stood too, his pulse loud in his ears. About what? About me. She stopped, started again. About my judgment being compromised. The words settled between them, heavy and dangerous. Marcus crossed the room slowly, stopped a few feet behind her. Victoria. She didn't turn around. Look at me. She did, finally, and Marcus saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Uncertainty. Fear. Is your judgment compromised? He asked quietly. I don't know, she said, and the admission seemed to cost her. I don't make mistakes. I don't let personal feelings interfere with professional decisions. I built this company by being smarter and more disciplined than everyone else. And now what? Now I can't stop thinking about the fact that you're the first person in 10 years who's looked at me like I'm more than just a balance sheet. Marcus's breath caught. I can't stop thinking, Victoria continued, her voice low and strained, about the way your daughter handed me that snowflake like it was the most valuable thing in the world. I can't stop thinking about the fact that when you talk about being scared, you don't hide it. You just say it. Like honesty isn't a weakness. She turned fully to face him, and Marcus saw the cracks in her armor spreading. I can't stop thinking about you, she said, and that terrifies me, because if I'm wrong about this, if I'm letting feelings cloud my judgment, then everything I've built could fall apart. Marcus took a step closer. And if you're not wrong? Victoria's expression shifted, something fragile and desperate. Then I don't know what to do with that either. They stood there, the space between them charged and impossible. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, could see the rise and fall of Victoria's breathing. Take the promotion, she said finally. You earned it. Whatever else is happening, whatever this is, that doesn't change the fact that you're good at what you do. And the rest of it? Victoria looked at him for a long moment. I don't know, but I think we need to figure it out before it figures us out. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay. Yeah, okay. Something like relief crossed Victoria's face. We'll be careful, professional. No one needs to know there's... She gestured vaguely between them. Anything. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to say that pretending felt wrong, that hiding felt like going backward. But he also understood what she was risking, what they were both risking. Professional, he agreed. Victoria extended her hand. Congratulations, Senior Project Manager. Marcus shook it, her skin warm against his, and felt the absurdity of the gesture even as he played along. When he left her office, the promotion paperwork clutched in his hand, he felt like he'd just survived something. Or maybe walked straight into the middle of it. He wasn't sure which scared him more. Being professional turned out to be harder than either of them anticipated. Marcus moved into a new office, still smaller than Victoria's, but with actual walls and a door that closed. His responsibilities expanded. He managed bigger teams, handled more complex projects, sat in meetings with executives who'd barely acknowledged him 6 months ago. And through it all, Victoria was there. Not hovering, not micromanaging, but present in a way that felt both supportive and dangerous. They worked late together, reviewed contracts side by side, debated strategy with the kind of intensity that left Marcus energized and exhausted in equal measure. And they were careful. So careful. No lingering glances in meetings, no casual touches, no conversations that strayed too far into personal territory when anyone else was around. But alone. Alone. The lines blurred. You're doing it again, Victoria said one night in early February. They were in her office, the rest of the building dark and empty, going over the final presentation for a potential client. Marcus looked up from his laptop. Doing what? That thing where you chew your pen when you're thinking. I don't chew my pen. She raised an eyebrow, glanced pointedly at the pen cap in his mouth. Marcus pulled it out, sheepish. Okay, maybe I chew my pen. Victoria's mouth twitched. It's distracting. Sorry. I didn't say I minded. The comment hung there, charged and careful. Marcus set the pen down. Victoria. We should focus, she said quickly, turning back to her screen. The presentation needs to be flawless. Marcus watched her for a moment, saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she was deliberately not looking at him. It's already flawless, he said quietly. You revised it 6 times. 7. And it still needs work. No, it doesn't. You're stalling. Victoria's fingers stilled on the keyboard. She turned to look at him, and Marcus saw something raw in her expression. Yes, she said. I'm stalling. Why? Because when we finish this, you're going to go home. And I'm going to stay here. And I'm trying not to think about how much I hate that. The honesty of it hit Marcus square in the chest. He closed his laptop, stood, walked around the desk until he was standing in front of her. "Come home with me," he said. Victoria blinked. "What?" "Come home with me. Not for—" He gestured vaguely. "Just to not be alone. Emma's with Mrs. Alvarez tonight. We can order takeout, watch something terrible on TV, be normal for a few hours." "I don't do normal." "Maybe you should try." Victoria looked up at him, conflict written across her face. "This is a bad idea." "Probably. People will talk if they find out." "Then we don't tell them." She stood, and they were close now, too close for professional, the space between them electric. "I'm your boss," Victoria said. "I know. This could ruin both of us." "I know that too." Victoria searched his face, and Marcus let her see whatever she needed to see. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay." They left separately, Victoria first, Marcus 10 minutes later. Met in the parking garage like they were planning a heist instead of just sharing a meal. Marcus drove. Victoria sat in the passenger seat of his beat-up Honda, looking completely out of place and somehow exactly right. "Your car is," she paused, diplomatic, "a disaster. You can say it." "I was going to say functional." Marcus laughed. "It gets me where I need to go. That's all that matters." They stopped for Chinese food, picked it up at the counter because the restaurant was too small for sitting. Drove to Marcus's apartment in comfortable silence, the city lights sliding past the windows. Mrs. Alvarez raised her eyebrows when she saw Victoria, but didn't comment, just handed Emma over with a knowing smile that made Marcus's face heat. "Who's that?" Emma asked as they climbed the stairs. "Ms. Reed from work." "The boss lady?" "Yeah, Bug, the boss lady." "Is she staying for dinner?" "Yeah." Emma considered this. "Okay, but she has to sit next to me." The apartment looked worse than Marcus remembered, cluttered and small, and nothing like the kind of place someone like Victoria would ever willingly spend time. But she walked in without hesitation, set her coat on the back of the couch, and settled onto the floor with Emma like it was the most natural thing in the world. They ate straight from the containers. Emma dominated the conversation, telling Victoria about her day at school, her best friend Mia, the hamster in their classroom that bit the teacher. Victoria listened with the same focused attention she brought to board meetings, asking follow-up questions, genuinely engaged. Marcus watched them from the kitchen, something warm and terrifying expanding in his chest. This was dangerous. This was everything he'd told himself not to want. But watching Victoria laugh at one of Emma's terrible jokes, watching his daughter lean against Victoria's shoulder like she'd known her forever, Marcus couldn't bring himself to regret it. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Victoria her room. Marcus followed, found them sitting on Emma's bed, looking at a photo album he'd made when Sarah first got sick. Pictures of the three of them, younger, happier, before everything fell apart. "That's Mommy," Emma said, pointing to a photo of Sarah holding her as a baby. Victoria touched the edge of the picture gently. "She's beautiful." "Daddy says I have her smile." "You do?" Emma looked up at Victoria seriously. "Do you have kids?" "No." "Why not?" "Emma," Marcus started, but Victoria shook her head. "It's okay." She looked at Emma thoughtfully. "I guess I never made time for it. I was always working." "That's sad." Victoria's expression shifted, something vulnerable and honest. "Yeah, sometimes it is." Emma patted her hand. "You can share my dad if you want. He's pretty good." Marcus choked on nothing. Victoria's eyes met his, amusement and something deeper flickering there. "That's very generous," Victoria said carefully. "But your dad is pretty busy taking care of you." "He's got extra," Emma insisted. "He takes care of Mrs. Alvarez too, and the plants, and me. He's got lots of extra." Marcus covered his face with his hand, mortified and weirdly proud all at once. Victoria stood, ruffled Emma's hair gently. "I'll keep that in mind." After Emma was in bed, asleep within minutes, exhausted from performing for company, Marcus and Victoria sat on the couch in the dim living room. The TV was on, but neither of them was watching it. I'm sorry about that, Marcus said. She doesn't understand boundaries. She understands exactly what matters, Victoria said quietly. That's different. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, someone's car alarm went off. A dog barked. The building settled with familiar creaks and groans. This is my life, Marcus said. It's not glamorous. It's not impressive. It's just real, Victoria finished. It's real. She turned to look at him, and Marcus saw something in her expression that made his breath catch. I don't know how to do this, Victoria said. I don't know how to be the person who has this. Who wants this? Then we figure it out together. I could hurt you, professionally, personally. I have more power here, and that makes everything complicated. I know. And if this goes wrong, Victoria, Marcus reached for her hand, held it gently. I've lost everything before. I know what that feels like. And I'm telling you right now, this is worth the risk. She looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. You're sure? I'm terrified. But yeah, I'm sure. Victoria leaned forward slowly, giving him time to pull back, time to change his mind. When he didn't, she kissed him, soft and careful and earth-shatteringly honest. When they broke apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. We're going to have to be so careful, Victoria whispered. I know. People are going to judge. They're going to assume the worst. Let them. She pulled back slightly, studied his face. You really mean that? I really mean that. Victoria smiled, small and real and devastating. Okay then. Okay. They stayed like that for a long time, the city humming beyond the walls. Two people who'd spent years convinced they didn't deserve softness, finally brave enough to reach for it anyway. They managed to keep it quiet for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of stolen moments in Victoria's office after everyone else had gone home. 6 weeks of carefully neutral expressions in meetings while Marcus's pulse hammered every time their eyes met. 6 weeks of Victoria showing up at his apartment with takeout and terrible excuses about needing to discuss project timelines, only to end up on the floor playing board games with Emma. 6 weeks of pretending this wasn't changing everything. Marcus knew it couldn't last. Knew that sooner or later someone would notice the way Victoria's voice softened when she said his name, or the way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching. He just didn't expect it to blow up the way it did. It started with Gerald Vance. Marcus was in the break room, refilling his coffee, when Gerald walked in with 2 executives from the finance department. They were mid-conversation, didn't notice Marcus at first. I'm just saying, Gerald said, his voice carrying that particular edge of someone who enjoyed gossip disguised as concern. It's interesting timing. He gets promoted right around the time they start working late together every night. One of the finance guys laughed. Come on, Gerald. You really think Victoria would risk her reputation for what? A project manager with a sob story and a decent face? I've seen it happen before. Powerful women, lonely, making poor choices. Marcus's hand tightened on his coffee mug. Besides, Gerald continued, did you see them at the holiday party? The way she looked at his kid. That's not professional interest. That's something else. Maybe she's just being nice. Victoria Reed doesn't do nice. She does strategic. And I'm telling you, something's going on. Marcus set his mug down on the counter hard enough that all 3 men turned. Gerald's face went carefully blank. Marcus, he said, didn't see you there. Clearly. The finance executives exchanged glances, suddenly very interested in the coffee maker. Gerald smiled, all teeth and no warmth. We were just discussing... I heard what you were discussing. Marcus's voice was level, controlled, but something dangerous hummed underneath. And you're wrong. Am I? Ms. Reed promoted me because I earned it, because I worked my ass off and delivered results. If you've got a problem with that, take it up with her. Gerald's smile widened. Touched a nerve, did I? You insulted my boss and implied I slept my way into a promotion. Yeah, you touched a nerve. I didn't say anything about sleeping. You didn't have to. Marcus stepped closer, and Gerald actually backed up half a step. Here's the thing, Gerald. You can question my qualifications all you want, but you don't get to question hers. You don't get to reduce everything she's built to some cheap rumor because you're uncomfortable with the fact that she saw something in me you missed. The break room had gone silent. Marcus could feel eyes on them from the hallway, people slowing down to listen. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Gerald said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Then everyone's wrong." Marcus grabbed his coffee and walked out, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might crack a rib. He made it to his office, closed the door, and sat down at his desk. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage so pure it felt like liquid fire in his veins. He'd known this would happen eventually. Knew that people would talk, would assume, would turn something real into something dirty. But hearing it out loud, hearing Victoria's name dragged through Gerald's smug speculation, his phone buzzed. "Victoria, my office. Now!" Marcus's stomach dropped. Someone must have already told her. Of course they had. Office gossip moved faster than email. He walked to her office on legs that felt disconnected from his body. Through the glass walls, he could see her at her desk, perfectly composed, but her jaw was tight. He knocked. She gestured him in without looking up. "Close the door." Marcus did. Victoria finished whatever she was typing, then finally looked at him. Her expression was unreadable, but Marcus had learned to read the small things, the tension around her eyes, the way her fingers were gripping her pen too hard. "Amanda just informed me," Victoria said carefully, "that you and Gerald had an altercation in the break room." It wasn't an altercation, it was a conversation. A conversation that multiple people overheard and are now speculating about. Marcus's jaw tightened. He was spreading rumors. About you. About us. "I know what he was saying, and you're okay with that?" Victoria's eyes flashed. "Of course I'm not okay with it, but confronting him publicly just confirmed everything he was implying. So I should have let him talk? Let him turn this into some sordid office affair? You should have ignored him. That's what I do." Marcus laughed, harsh and disbelieving. "You ignore everything. That's the problem." Victoria stood, her posture rigid. "Excuse me? You've spent so long pretending you don't feel anything that you've forgotten how to fight for what actually matters." "I am fighting," Victoria said, her voice low and strained. "I'm fighting to keep this company running, to keep my credibility intact, to protect both of our careers from exactly this kind of fallout. By pretending I'm just another employee, by acting like what we have isn't real. It can't be real if it destroys everything we've worked for." The words hung between them, sharp and devastating. Marcus took a breath, forced himself to speak calmly. "He called you lonely, said you were making poor choices. And you want me to just ignore that?" Victoria's expression cracked, just for a second. "Yes, because responding gives it power. Silence would have let it die." "Silence is what got you here in the first place," Marcus said quietly. "Alone in this office, running a company, but not having a life." Victoria flinched like he'd hit her. Marcus immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." Victoria's voice was flat now, controlled again. "And maybe you're right. Maybe I have chosen work over everything else, but that choice kept me safe, kept me from getting hurt." "You're already hurt," Marcus said. "You're just too stubborn to admit it." They stared at each other across the desk, the space between them feeling wider than it had in weeks. Finally, Victoria sat down. "We need to be more careful." "We've been careful." "Not careful enough," Gerald suspects. "Other people probably do too, and if this gets back to the board, then we deal with it." "You don't understand what you're asking me to risk." Marcus leaned forward, his hands flat on her desk. "I understand perfectly. You're asking me to risk the same thing, my job, my reputation, my ability to provide for my daughter. But I'm willing to do it, because what we have is worth more than what they think." Victoria looked at him, and Marcus saw the war happening behind her eyes. Fear and longing and stubborn, impossible hope, all fighting for dominance. "I need time," she said finally, "to figure out how to handle this without everything falling apart." Marcus nodded slowly, even though it felt like swallowing glass. "Okay. Okay? Yeah. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready." He turned to leave, but Victoria's voice stopped him. "Marcus." He looked back. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for defending me, even if it made things harder." Marcus managed a small smile. Someone had to. He left her office and went back to work, buried himself in project timelines and budget reviews and all the safe controllable things that didn't require him to feel anything. But that night, alone in his apartment after Emma was asleep, Marcus let himself admit the truth. He was in love with Victoria Reed, and he had no idea if she'd ever let herself love him back. The rumors spread like oil on water. Marcus heard the whispers in the hallway, saw the looks in meetings. Amanda pulled him aside one afternoon, her expression worried. "People are talking," she said. "I know. Are they right?" Marcus met her eyes. "Would it matter if they were?" Amanda studied him for a long moment. "To HR? Probably. To me? Only if one of you is being coerced or if it's affecting work quality, which, from where I'm standing, it's not." "It's not," Marcus confirmed. "Then be smarter about it, because Gerald's looking for ammunition, and you just handed him a loaded gun." Marcus took her advice, became meticulous about professional distance, stopped working late in Victoria's office, kept their interactions brief and businesslike when anyone else was around. Victoria did the same. If anything, she became colder, more formal, more distant, like she was overcompensating for every moment of softness. It felt like losing her in slow motion. 2 weeks passed, then 3. They barely spoke outside of work contexts. The texts stopped. The late-night takeout disappeared. Emma noticed. "Where's Victoria?" she asked one night at dinner. "Working," Marcus said, which wasn't exactly a lie. "She hasn't visited in forever." "It's only been a few weeks, Bug." Emma pushed her food around her plate. "Did you have a fight?" Marcus's throat tightened. "Why would you think that?" "Because you're sad, and you're only sad when something's wrong." He looked at his daughter, the small person who saw too much and understood more than she should, and felt something break inside him. "Yeah," he admitted. "We kind of did. You should say sorry." "It's more complicated than that." Emma shrugged. "Mia's mom says sorry fixes everything." "Mia's mom is very wise." "So you'll say sorry?" Marcus smiled despite the ache in his chest. "I'll try." But before he could figure out how, everything changed. It was a Thursday afternoon when Gerald made his move. Marcus was in a project review meeting when Amanda's assistant appeared at the door, pale and urgent. "Marcus, you need to come with me, now." The walk to HR felt like a death march. The director, a woman named Patricia Chen, sat behind her desk with a file folder open in front of her. Gerald sat to the side, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Hale," Patricia said, "please sit." Marcus sat. "We've received a formal complaint regarding your relationship with Ms. Reed." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "What kind of complaint?" Gerald spoke up, his voice dripping with false concern. "I've observed multiple instances of inappropriate behavior between you and Ms. Reed, extended private meetings, excessive personal communication, favoritism in project assignments, and promotion decisions." "That's not—" Patricia held up a hand. "Mr. Vance has documentation. Text messages, meeting logs, witness statements from other employees who've observed concerning interactions." Marcus's mind raced. "Ms. Reed and I have a professional relationship. Anything else is what, Mr. Hale?" Gerald said smoothly. "Because multiple people saw her at your apartment, saw her with your daughter. That's not professional." Marcus's hands clenched into fists under the table. "She was there for work discussions." At 8 p.m. on a Saturday?" Patricia looked genuinely sympathetic. "Mr. Hale, I need to ask you directly. Are you and Miss Reed involved in a romantic relationship?" Marcus thought about lying, about protecting Victoria, protecting himself, protecting everything they'd built. But Emma's voice echoed in his head. Sorry fixes everything, and maybe honesty was the only sorry that mattered. "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "We are." Gerald's expression flickered with triumph. Patricia's face remained neutral, but she made a note in her file. "How long has this been going on?" 2 months, since early February. And your promotion to senior project manager occurred in January. It did, but I earned that promotion. It had nothing to do with our personal relationship. That's not how it looks, Mr. Hale. I don't care how it looks. It's the truth. Patricia closed the file. "We'll need to speak with Miss Reed. You're suspended pending investigation, with pay. Please gather your personal items and leave the building." Marcus stood on autopilot, his mind disconnected from his body. No communication with Ms. Reed until this is resolved. That includes text, email, or in-person contact. She didn't do anything wrong. That's what the investigation will determine. Gerald stood too, and Marcus saw the satisfaction in his eyes, saw the small, ugly victory. This isn't about protecting the company, Marcus said, his voice low. This is about you being vindictive. This is about maintaining professional standards, Gerald replied smoothly. Marcus wanted to hit him, wanted to wipe that smug expression off his face. Instead, he turned and walked out, his career possibly over, his relationship with Victoria hanging by a thread. He made it to his office, gathered his laptop and a few personal items. People avoided his eyes. Amanda caught him in the hallway. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't know Gerald was planning. It's fine. It's not fine. This is Amanda. Marcus looked at her, exhausted. Can you do me a favor? Anything. Tell Victoria I'm sorry. Tell her I didn't mean for this to happen. Amanda's eyes were bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. Tell her yourself when this is over. Marcus nodded, even though he wasn't sure there would be an after. He left the building, walked to the bus stop in the cold March wind, and called Mrs. Alvarez. Can you keep Emma tonight? Of course, honey. Is everything okay? Not really, but it will be. He hung up and sat on the bench, watching the city move around him, and wondered how everything had fallen apart so fast. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, he answered. Yeah? Mr. Hale, this is Patricia Chen. I need you to know that Ms. Reed just walked into my office and resigned. Marcus's world tilted. She what? She submitted her resignation, effective immediately. She said, and I quote, I won't let him take the fall for my choices. Marcus stood, his heart pounding. Where is she? She's leaving the building now, but Mr. Hale. He hung up, ran. He caught her in the parking garage, walking toward her car with a single box of personal items. She stopped when she saw him, her expression carefully blank. You resigned, Marcus said, breathless. Yes. Why? Because they were going to fire you, and I couldn't. Her voice cracked. I couldn't let that happen. Marcus crossed the distance between them. So you threw away everything you built instead? What I built doesn't matter if it costs you your future. That's not your choice to make. Yes, it is. Victoria set the box down on the hood of her car. I'm the one with power here. I'm the CEO. If anyone deserves consequences, it's me. We both deserve consequences. We both made this choice. And I'm the one who should have known better. Victoria's composure was cracking, her voice raw. I should have been stronger. Should have kept my distance. Should have protected you. I don't need protection. I need you to stop sacrificing yourself like you're the only one who matters in this. I'm trying to fix this. By running away? By proving Gerald right, that this was some inappropriate power dynamic instead of two people who actually care about each other? Victoria looked at him, and Marcus saw the fear in her eyes. The absolute terror of someone who'd spent decades in control suddenly free-falling. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be the person who chooses someone over everything else. Marcus took her hands. Then let me show you. Marcus, we fight this together. We tell them the truth, that we're both adults who entered into this relationship knowing the risks, that I earned my promotion before we got involved, that this is real. And if they don't believe us, then we find new jobs. We start over. But we do it together. Victoria searched his face, and Marcus watched the moment she decided, saw the fear give way to something braver. Okay, she said. Okay. Marcus pulled her into his arms, and Victoria buried her face in his shoulder, shaking. I'm terrified, she admitted. Me too. I've never been this scared of losing something. I know, but you're not alone anymore. They stood there in the dim parking garage, holding on to each other like they could anchor themselves against the storm. And maybe they could. The investigation took 2 weeks. Patricia Chen interviewed everyone. Marcus, Victoria, Amanda, Gerald, random employees who'd witnessed various interactions. She reviewed emails, text messages, meeting schedules. Marcus spent the time suspended in his apartment, stress cooking meals he didn't eat, playing endless games with Emma, trying not to spiral. Victoria called every night. Not about the investigation, they'd been warned against discussing it, but about everything else. What Emma did that day, what book Marcus was reading, what Victoria was doing with her sudden excess of free time. I cleaned my entire house, she said one night. You have a cleaning service. I fired them. Turns out I'm very particular about how towels should be folded. Marcus laughed despite everything. Control issues. Shocking. I prefer to think of it as high standards. Same thing. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, I miss you. Marcus's chest tightened. I miss you too. Emma asked when I was coming over. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her soon. Tell her we're figuring things out. And if we can't, we will, Marcus said firmly. We have to. On the 14th day, Patricia called them both in. Separately first, then together. Marcus sat in the same chair as before, his hands steady despite the anxiety churning in his gut. Patricia looked tired. I've completed my investigation. Here's what I found. She laid out the timeline. Marcus's promotion was approved in late December, before any romantic involvement began. The projects he'd been assigned were based on skill and availability, not favoritism. Multiple colleagues confirmed that he'd earned his position through competence and hard work. However, Patricia continued, the relationship itself presents a conflict of interest. Ms. Reed, as CEO, holds significant power over Mr. Hale's career trajectory. While I don't believe the relationship began inappropriately, maintaining it while Ms. Reed is in a direct supervisory role is problematic. Marcus's stomach sank. I'm recommending, Patricia said, that Ms. Reed be reinstated. Her resignation was premature and based on incomplete information. However, Mr. Hale should report to a different supervisor to eliminate the power dynamic. I can do that, Marcus said quickly, and there will be mandatory training on workplace relationships for both of you. Fine. Patricia allowed herself a small smile. For what it's worth, I don't think you two did anything malicious. You just fell for each other in a complicated environment. It happens. Relief flooded through Marcus so suddenly he felt dizzy. Thank you, he managed. Don't thank me yet. Gerald's filing a formal complaint with the board about Ms. Reed's leadership. This isn't over. But it was something. A foothold. A chance. When Victoria joined them, Patricia repeated the findings. Victoria's expression remained controlled, but Marcus saw her hands unclench. I accept these terms, Victoria said. When can Mr. Hale return to work? Monday. They walked out together, careful to maintain professional distance until they reached the parking garage. Then Victoria turned to him, and the mask dropped. We survived, she said, something like wonder in her voice. Marcus pulled her close. Told you we would. Gerald's not done. The board meeting is in 3 days. Then we prepare. And we fight. Victoria looked up at him, and Marcus saw something he'd never seen before in her eyes. Not fear, not control. Trust. Together? She asked. Marcus kissed her forehead. Together. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. in the main conference room on the 15th floor. Marcus wasn't invited. Technically, he had no standing in a discussion about the CEO's fitness to lead, but Victoria told him everything anyway. They sat in her car Thursday night, parked outside his building, Emma already asleep upstairs with Mrs. Alvarez. Gerald's argument is simple, Victoria said, staring out the windshield at nothing. I've compromised my judgment, shown favoritism, created a hostile work environment by engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. None of that's true. Truth doesn't matter if the perception is strong enough. She turned to look at him. He's got 3 board members on his side already. I need 4 votes to keep my position. Right now, I have 3 confirmed, 2 maybes, and 1 who won't return my calls. Marcus did the math. That's not good. No, it's not. So what's the plan? Victoria smiled, tired but genuine. I'm going to tell them the truth, that I fell in love with someone, that it didn't affect my professional judgment, that I've built this company into something worth protecting, and Gerald's just using this as an excuse to stage a power grab. Will they listen? I don't know, but I'm done hiding. She reached for his hand. You showed me that. That being honest is worth more than being safe. Marcus squeezed her fingers. What happens if they vote you out? Then I start over. Build something new. Maybe something better. She looked at him seriously. But I need to know you're okay with that. With the possibility that I might lose everything. You won't lose everything. You'll still have me. That's not... It's enough, Marcus said firmly. It has to be enough. Because if you spend your whole life protecting an empire but never let yourself actually live in it, what's the point? Victoria's eyes were bright. She leaned across the console and kissed him, slow and deliberate, like she was memorizing the shape of it. I love you, she said when they broke apart. I should have said it weeks ago. Marcus's heart stuttered. Yeah? Yeah. Well, Marcus said, for the record, I love you too. Even though you're stubborn and controlling and you fold towels like a psychopath. Victoria laughed, the sound breaking something open. Those are some of my best qualities. I know. They sat there in the dark, holding hands, and Marcus felt the weight of everything that had brought them to this moment. Sarah's death, Emma's resilience, the crooked tie that started it all, every choice, every risk, every moment of terrifying honesty. Whatever happens tomorrow, Victoria said quietly, thank you for making me remember what it feels like to want something more than success. Marcus brought her hand to his lips. Thank you for fixing my tie. She smiled. It's still crooked half the time. I know, but you don't seem to mind. No, Victoria said softly. I really don't. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp spring morning that felt dishonest, too bright, too clean for the chaos waiting inside. Marcus went to work. His new supervisor was Amanda, which felt right. She didn't hover, didn't treat him differently, just gave him projects and expected excellence. But everyone knew about the board meeting. The office hummed with tension, people clustered in small groups, conversations dying when he walked past. Marcus kept his head down, focused on work, and tried not to watch the clock. At 1:50, his phone buzzed. Victoria. Going in. Wish me luck. Marcus typed back. You don't need luck. You've got the truth. That's better. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I hope you're right. Then nothing. Marcus stared at his screen, willing time to move faster and slower simultaneously. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 hours. 2 hours of Victoria defending herself, her choices, her right to be both powerful and human. 2 hours of Gerald trying to take it all away. Marcus couldn't focus. Gave up pretending. At 3 p.m., he walked to the break room, made coffee he didn't want, and found Amanda already there. You look like hell, she said. Feel worse. She's going to be fine. Victoria's the smartest person in any room. The board knows that. Gerald's smart too, and he's ruthless. Amanda leaned against the counter. You know what I think? I think Gerald's scared of her, of what she represents. A woman who built something from nothing, who doesn't need anyone's approval, who refuses to play by the old rules. She paused. And I think the fact that she chose you, someone real, someone who challenges her, that terrifies him even more. Marcus managed a weak smile. That's a nice theory. It's the truth. Gerald's been trying to undermine her for years. This was just his best opportunity. What if it works? Then we all quit and start our own company. I've been wanting to leave Gerald's condescending ass behind for months anyway. Despite everything, Marcus laughed. His phone buzzed. Not Victoria. Emma's school. His stomach dropped. I have to take this. He stepped into the hallway. Hello? Mr. Hale, this is Principal Morrison. Emma's fine, but we need you to come pick her up. She's not feeling well. Marcus closed his eyes. Of course. Of course this was happening now. How bad? Fever of 101. Nothing serious, but we can't keep her here. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, grabbed his coat, and nearly collided with Amanda in the hallway. Emma's sick. I have to go. Go. I'll cover for you. Marcus made it to the school in 15 minutes, found Emma in the nurse's office looking pale and miserable. Hey, Bug. I don't feel good, Daddy. I know. Let's get you home. He signed her out, carried her to the car, drove home with one hand on the wheel and the other checking her forehead at every red light. Mrs. Alvarez met them at the building. "I've got soup and that children's medicine. You go do what you need to do." "I can't leave her." "Yes, you can. I raised 4 kids through every flu and fever known to man. She'll be fine." Mrs. Alvarez fixed him with a look. "That woman of yours needs you today more than Emma does. Go." Marcus hesitated, torn. But Emma was already nodding off against Mrs. Alvarez's shoulder, and Victoria was facing the fight of her career alone. "Call me if anything changes," he said. "I will. Now go." Marcus went. He made it back to the office at 4:30. The board meeting was still going. He could see through the conference room windows, Victoria standing at the head of the table, composed and fierce, Gerald seated with his arms crossed, the board members' faces unreadable. Marcus wanted to burst in, to stand next to her, to make them see what he saw. But this was her fight. All he could do was wait. Amanda found him lurking near the elevators. "Still going?" "Yeah." "Come on. Waiting in the hallway makes you look desperate." They went back to Marcus's office. Amanda brought coffee. They sat in silence, pretending to work, the minutes crawling past like wounded things. At 5:15, Marcus's phone rang. "Victoria." He answered immediately. "Hey." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the tremor underneath. "It's done." "And?" 5 votes to 3. "I keep my position." Relief crashed through him so hard he had to sit down. "You won." "We won," Victoria corrected. "Gerald's been reassigned. Reports to me now instead of sitting on the executive committee. The board made it clear this was his last chance." "How'd you do it?" "I told them the truth, that I'd spent 15 years building this company at the expense of everything else. That meeting, you reminded me that success without meaning is just expensive loneliness. That I made choices, personal choices, that didn't compromise my professional judgment, but did make me human." She paused. "And I told them if they couldn't accept that, I'd leave. But I wouldn't apologize for falling in love." Marcus's throat was too tight to speak. "The 2 swing votes came from Eleanor Chen and David Okoye," Victoria continued. "Eleanor said, and I quote, 'About damn time you remembered you're a person, and not just a profit margin.' David said he'd rather have a CEO with a life than one who burns out at 50. I like Eleanor and David." "Me too." Victoria's voice softened. "Where are you?" "Office. Emma got sick. Mrs. Alvarez has her." "Is she okay?" "Fever. Nothing serious, but I should get home." "I'll meet you there." Marcus paused. "Victoria, you just survived a corporate coup. You should celebrate, decompress, not, 'I want to be there,'" Victoria said firmly. "With you and Emma, if that's okay." Something warm and permanent settled in Marcus's chest. "Yeah, that's more than okay." "Good. I'll bring soup, the good kind, not canned." She hung up, and Marcus sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. They'd survived, battered and exhausted, but intact. Amanda poked her head in. "Well?" "She won." Amanda's face split into a grin. "I knew it. That woman's unkillable." "Apparently. Go home, Marcus. Be with your family." The word stopped him. Family. Not just Emma. Not anymore. "Yeah," he said. "I will." Victoria arrived an hour later with containers of homemade chicken soup that smelled like comfort itself. Emma was curled up on the couch in pajamas, her fever down to 99, watching cartoons with glazed eyes. "Victoria!" Emma perked up immediately, then slumped. "I'm sick." "I heard." Victoria set the soup down and sat on the edge of the couch, checking Emma's forehead with the back of her hand. "How do you feel?" "Bad, but better now that you're here." Victoria smiled. "Well, I brought magic soup." "There's no such thing as magic soup." "There is. My grandmother's recipe. She used to make it whenever I was sick." Emma's eyes widened. "Did it work?" "Every time." Marcus watched them from the kitchen, something almost painful swelling in his chest. Victoria, still in her work clothes, exhausted from a battle she shouldn't have had to fight, sitting on his worn couch and promising his daughter magic soup. This was the woman the board had questioned. The woman Gerald had tried to paint as compromised, weak, unfit. They were all idiots. Emma ate half a bowl of soup, proclaimed it actually magic, and fell asleep 20 minutes later with her head in Victoria's lap. Marcus sat on the other end of the couch, Victoria between them, her hand absently stroking Emma's hair. "This is nice," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah? Yeah, I didn't know it could be like this. Just quiet, simple." It's not always simple. Sometimes she throws tantrums that last 40 minutes. Sometimes I burn dinner. Sometimes the toilet overflows at 2 a.m. Victoria laughed softly. "Sounds perfect." Marcus studied her. "You mean that?" "I do." She looked at him, something vulnerable in her expression. "I spent so long thinking success meant control. But this?" She gestured vaguely at the cramped apartment, the sleeping child, the mess of living. "This feels more real than anything I've built. You don't have to choose between them, the company and this. You can have both." "Can I?" "We just proved it. You kept your position. I kept my job. We're still here." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, "Gerald said something during the meeting. He said I'd regret choosing you over the company, that personal happiness was a luxury CEOs couldn't afford." "What'd you say?" "I told him happiness wasn't a luxury. It was the whole point." She smiled, tired but real. Then Eleanor told him to shut up and sit down. Marcus laughed. "I really like Eleanor." They sat in comfortable silence, Emma breathing softly between them, the city humming beyond the walls. "I want to do this right," Victoria said eventually. "Not just the sneaking around, the hiding. I want Emma to know she can count on me. I want you to know I'm not going anywhere." Marcus's heart kicked. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified," Victoria admitted. "I've never been anyone's partner before. Never been part of a family. I'm going to mess it up sometimes." "So will I. I mess it up constantly." "But you keep trying." "Yeah, I do." Victoria looked down at Emma, then back at Marcus. "Then we keep trying together." Marcus shifted closer, careful not to wake Emma. "Does this mean you're officially my girlfriend?" Because Emma's going to want clarification. Victoria's mouth twitched. "I'm 46 years old. I think I'm past the girlfriend stage." "What stage are you at then?" "The ridiculously in love with you and committed to making this work despite it being completely terrifying stage." That's a mouthful. "It's accurate." Marcus kissed her, soft and careful, and felt the last piece of armor fall away. This was real. Messy and imperfect and absolutely real. When they broke apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For being brave enough to let me in. For showing me what actually matters. You did the same for me. Made me believe I deserved more than just surviving." They stayed like that, the three of them tangled together on a second-hand couch in an apartment that was too small and too loud and exactly right. Spring turned to summer. Marcus settled into his new role reporting to Amanda. The gossip faded, replaced by new scandals, new dramas. Gerald kept his head down, his power diminished, his attempts at sabotage half-hearted now that the board had made their position clear. Victoria threw herself back into running the company, but with a difference. She left at 6 most days, took weekends off, came to Emma's school events and Marcus's company softball games, and sat through children's movies without checking her phone. She wasn't perfect at it. Sometimes she worked through dinner, sometimes she got too focused and forgot to call. But she tried, and the trying mattered. Emma adored her. Within a month, she was asking when Victoria was coming over, saving artwork to show her, demanding her presence at bedtime story sessions. "She's basically moved in," Marcus said one night in July. They were on his fire escape, the city spread out below them, Emma asleep inside. "I still have my place," Victoria pointed out. "You haven't been there in a week. It's closer to the office from here. It's 15 minutes farther. Try again." Victoria smiled. "Fine. I like being here. I like waking up with you. I like Emma bursting in at 6 a.m. demanding pancakes. I like this. So move in for real. Stop pretending you're just visiting." Victoria turned to look at him, something careful in her expression. "You're sure?" "Emma asked me last week when you were going to stay forever. I didn't have a good answer." "What did you tell her?" "That I was working on it." Victoria's eyes were bright. Then I guess you should stop working and just ask. Marcus took her hand. Victoria Reed, will you move into my cramped apartment with broken heating and a bathroom that floods every other week? When you put it that way, how can I resist? I'm serious. So am I. Victoria laced their fingers together. Yes, I'll move in, on one condition. What's that? We get a bigger place, one where Emma has her own bathroom, and you have an actual office, and I don't have to fold myself into a pretzel to fit in the shower. Marcus laughed. Deal. They moved in August to a 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood with working heat and a kitchen that didn't require an engineering degree to operate. Emma got to pick out paint colors for her room, purple with silver stars on the ceiling. Marcus set up a home office where he could work when needed. Victoria claimed the second bathroom and filled it with expensive products that made the whole apartment smell like lavender. It was chaotic and loud and nothing like the pristine, controlled space Victoria had lived in before. She'd never been happier. One night in September, after Emma was asleep and they were sprawled on the couch watching a documentary Victoria had insisted was fascinating, Marcus's phone rang. Sarah's mother. He hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. He answered carefully. Margaret? Marcus, hi. Her voice was strained. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I wanted to call, to apologize. Marcus sat up, suddenly alert. Victoria muted the TV. I wasn't there for you, Margaret continued. After Sarah died, I was drowning in my own grief, and I couldn't watch you raise Emma alone. It was too hard. So I disappeared, and that was wrong. Marcus's throat was tight. It's okay. It's not, but I'm trying to do better now. I'd like to see Emma, if that's okay. I'd like to be part of her life again. Marcus glanced at Victoria. She squeezed his hand. Yeah, Marcus said. Yeah, I think Emma would like that. They made plans. Margaret would visit next month. They'd take it slow, see how it went. When Marcus hung up, Victoria pulled him close. You okay? She asked. Yeah, just didn't expect that. People change, sometimes for the better. Marcus kissed her temple. Yeah, they do. October brought Emma's 6th birthday. They threw a party at the park, kids running wild, cake that was more frosting than substance. Marcus and Victoria tag-teaming the chaos with the kind of synchronized efficiency that came from actually being a team. Margaret came. Met Victoria with the kind of careful politeness that hid 1,000 questions. But she was kind to Emma, and Emma was thrilled to have her grandmother back. Afterward, when the guests had left and Emma was showing Margaret her new bike, Victoria leaned against Marcus. That went well. Better than I expected. Margaret kept staring at me like she was trying to figure out if I was real. Marcus laughed. Can you blame her? 6 months ago, I was barely holding it together. Now I'm living with the CEO of a major company. Former solo disaster, current functional adult. It's a journey. We're both disasters. We're just disasters together now. Victoria smiled. I'll take it. They watched Emma ride her bike in wobbly circles, Margaret walking beside her, and Marcus felt the weight of the past 5 years finally lift. Sarah was gone. That would always hurt, but he'd built something new from the rubble, something good and real and worth fighting for. Later that night, after Margaret left and Emma was in bed, Victoria found Marcus in their bedroom staring at the photo on the nightstand, the one of him and Sarah and baby Emma, young and hopeful and unaware of what was coming. You okay? Victoria asked. Marcus nodded. Yeah, just thinking about how different everything is now. Victoria sat next to him. Do you miss it? The before? I miss Sarah. I always will. But this, he gestured around them. This isn't second place. It's not settling. It's just different. Good different? The best kind of different. Victoria rested her head on his shoulder. She'd be proud of you. Of the father you've become. Of the life you've built for Emma. Marcus's eyes burned. You think? I know. They sat in silence for a while, the photo on the nightstand a bridge between past and present, grief and joy, everything that had been and everything that was still becoming. Finally, Marcus stood, took Victoria's hand. Come on, let's go to bed. It's only 9. I know, but I'm tired, and I want to fall asleep next to you. Victoria smiled. Best offer I've had all day. They climbed into bed, Victoria curling into Marcus's side, her hand over his heart. "Hey, Victoria?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for taking a chance on the guy with the crooked tie." Victoria lifted her head, looked at him with eyes full of something too big for words. "Thank you for showing me that perfection is overrated. That messy and real beats controlled and lonely every single time." Marcus kissed her, slow and thorough, and felt the truth of it settle into his bones. They'd both been so convinced that strength meant standing alone, that needing someone was weakness, that safety came from walls instead of bridges. But they'd been wrong. Real strength was standing side by side with someone who saw all your broken pieces and chose you anyway. Who made you better not by fixing you, but by loving you exactly as you were. Real strength was a crooked tie and a second chance and a 5-year-old who believed in magic soup. Real strength was choosing to build something together, knowing it might fall apart, and doing it anyway because the trying mattered more than the guarantee. Outside, the city hummed with its endless noise. Inside, Marcus Hale and Victoria Reed held on to each other and dreamed of futures they'd never thought they deserved. And for the first time in a very long time, both of them believed those dreams might actually come true. 1 year later, Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror, wrestling with his tie for the 3rd time. Some things never changed. "Daddy, you're going to be late," Emma called from the hallway. "I know, Bug. Give me a minute." The tie sat crooked. Again. Marcus sighed, started over. Victoria appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a navy suit that made her look like she could run countries, not just companies. She watched him struggle for exactly 5 seconds before stepping forward. "Let me," she said. Marcus dropped his hands, let her work. Her fingers were quick and sure, the motion so familiar now it felt like breathing. "There," Victoria said, straightening the knot. "Perfect." Marcus looked in the mirror. The tie sat slightly to the left. "It's crooked," he said. Victoria smiled. "I know. You did that on purpose." "Maybe I like it crooked. Reminds me of the first time I met you." Marcus pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "You're sentimental." "Only about certain things." Emma burst into the bathroom, already in her flower girl dress, her hair in careful braids that Victoria had spent 40 minutes on that morning. "Are we going or what? Margaret said we can't be late to our own wedding." Marcus caught Victoria's eye. "Our daughter has a point." "Our daughter needs to learn patience," Victoria replied, but she was smiling as she said it. They'd had the conversation about adoption 3 months ago. Emma had asked, Victoria had cried, and Marcus had held them both while they figured out what family actually meant. The paperwork was filed. The lawyers were optimistic. By Christmas, it would be official. The wedding was small, just close friends, Emma, Margaret, Mrs. Alvarez, Amanda, and a handful of colleagues who'd become something more than coworkers over the past year. They held it in the same park where they'd thrown Emma's birthday party, under trees just starting to turn gold with early autumn. Marcus had been nervous about the whole thing, worried it was too fast, too public, too much of a statement, but Victoria had looked at him with those sharp eyes gone soft and said, "I spent 15 years hiding. I'm done with that." So here they were. The ceremony was short. The officiant kept it simple. Emma stood between them, holding both their hands, grinning like she'd orchestrated the whole thing herself. When it came time for vows, Marcus went first. "I'm not good at speeches," he started, and Emma giggled. "But I'm good at showing up, at trying, at not giving up even when everything's falling apart." He looked at Victoria. "You taught me that being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means finding someone who makes you braver than you thought you could be. So that's my promise, to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep choosing you every single day." Victoria's eyes were bright. She took a breath, steadied herself. "I spent most of my life thinking success meant control," she said, "that feelings were weaknesses to be managed. And then you walked into my office with a crooked tie and more courage than sense, and you ruined everything." She smiled. "You made me want messy, want real, want a life that meant something beyond quarterly earnings and board meetings. So my promise is this. I'll keep choosing messy, keep choosing real, keep choosing you and Emma and this beautiful, chaotic life we're building together." Marcus's throat was too tight to speak. He just nodded, squeezed her hand. The officiant pronounced them married, and Emma cheered before they could even kiss. The reception was loud and imperfect. The catering was late. Someone's kid knocked over the cake table. Mrs. Alvarez got tipsy on champagne and told embarrassing stories about Marcus to anyone who would listen. It was exactly right. Later, when the sun was setting and Emma was running wild with the other kids, Margaret found Marcus near the edge of the park. Sarah would have loved her, Margaret said quietly, watching Emma laugh. Marcus's chest tightened. Yeah, she would have. And she would have liked Victoria too. Would have been glad you found someone who makes you happy. Marcus looked at his former mother-in-law, this woman who'd disappeared when grief got too heavy and had fought her way back when she was ready. Thank you, he said, for saying that. Margaret smiled, sad but genuine. Sarah wanted you to be happy, Marcus. She told me that near the end. Said she was worried you'd stop living when she was gone. Her eyes were wet. I'm glad she was wrong. She walked away before Marcus could respond, leaving him standing alone with the weight of the past and the promise of the future pressing against each other like hands folded in prayer. Victoria found him a few minutes later. You okay? She asked. Marcus pulled her close. Yeah, just thinking about how far we've come. From a crooked tie to a wedding, it's been a journey. The best kind. They stood there watching Emma play, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, watching their community of people who'd shown up and stayed. Hey, Victoria? Yeah? You know that promotion the board offered you? The one that would make you regional director over 3 offices? Victoria had turned it down 2 weeks ago. Said she was happy where she was, didn't need the extra responsibility. What about it? She asked. You should take it. Victoria pulled back to look at him. We talked about this. It's too much travel, too much time away from us. I know, but Emma and I will be fine, and you've earned it. You shouldn't have to choose between your career and your family. I'm not choosing. I'm prioritizing. You can do both, Marcus said firmly. We'll figure it out. We always do. Victoria studied his face. You're sure? I'm sure. Besides, Emma wants to know what airplanes are like. This gives her an excuse to visit you on business trips. Victoria laughed. You're going to regret that when she's demanding first-class seats. Probably. But it'll be worth it. They kissed as the sun set behind them, and Marcus felt the truth of it settle deep. This was what love looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but real and chosen and fought for every single day. Emma crashed into them a moment later, breathless and demanding cake despite the fact that most of it was currently on the ground. Can we go home now? She asked. I'm tired. Yeah, Bug, Marcus said, scooping her up even though she was getting too big for it. Let's go home. Victoria drove. Emma fell asleep in the back seat before they made it out of the park. Marcus watched the city slide past the window. The same city he'd navigated on buses with his last $8. The same city where he'd nearly lost everything and somehow found more than he'd ever imagined. What are you thinking about? Victoria asked. That I'm really glad my tie was crooked that day. Victoria reached over, laced her fingers through his. Me too. They drove home through the gathering dark, 3 people who'd learned the hard way that strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about finding someone worth standing beside, worth fighting for, worth choosing over and over again, even when it was hard, even when it was messy, even when the whole world had opinions about whether they deserved it. They'd built something real from broken pieces and impossible odds. A family, a life, a love that didn't demand perfection, just presence. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything.